Well, call it deja vu for some. They say they've seen it before, not once, not twice, not thrice. And it happened again. INEC and the outcome of the Anambra elections. Joining us in the studios this time is Emmanuel Mock, is a public affairs analyst, as well as, someone also in politics. Well, good to have you this morning.
Thank you very much.
You've been following the issues, the campaigns, as well as INEC at that point in time displaying the voter register, also bringing up a particular number where you can actually call and send some information and get the feedback that your name is on that particular register. We thought it was a fantastic one from INEC, but on that day, well, the people actually said something quite different.
Sincerely, it's a shock to me that after the number of times INEC has conducted elections since the general elections, that we should still have this kind of problem in Anambra State. I cannot imagine why so many people will come to a polling booth and their names are not on the register, and INEC displayed those voter registers. So I'm surprised.
Is it possible? How does it work? Because one would have thought that once your name is there, then you just come in on election day and vote. But because if they didn't find their names before the elections, the complaints would have actually been raised. But it was on that same day they realized that
their names were not on the register. Maybe it's like all of us. We registered. We have our temporary voter cards. INEC says they are going to give permanent voter cards. We are waiting for that. So you can imagine when INEC decides that they are displaying voter registers, maybe 2 weeks to elections, you take it for granted. My name is on the voter register. I don't need to go and verify it again because I was part of the last elections. So for a new election of this nature to now come up and you find that your name is no longer on the register, it means the registers have been tampered with.
Now, we even understand that there were some cases where voters actually went to see if their names were on the register. Some of them confirmed that their names were there, but I think some people had complaints, and INEC chairman actually promised that the register will be corrected. Also, there were some errors with the register when it was displayed. I think I was at, what was that? Was that Thursday, sometime last week. But by the day they were supposed to vote, which was Saturday, a lot of names had disappeared.
From the register, exactly.
It was even worse than when it was before it went for correction.
You know what I'm looking at is, if you remember, I think 2010, before the general elections, there was a lot of talk about the import of these digital capture machines for voter registration, and there was a lot of talk that INEC was creating a database such that elections will now be more properly monitored. Votes, you cannot vote twice. You will not be able to register twice. Like when INEC came out this time and said that they caught many people who had done multiple registration, I took it for granted that it is the effect of those machines that they had put in place. So to now have a situation where the voter registers are not correct, so even one of the candidates' name not being there, there's a fundamental flaw with even what INEC had done. We need to ask INEC what's happened to the data they captured, what happened to the data capture machines, what happened to the hardcore on which they stored this information, because this information shouldn't get missing. I mean, MTN has been in Nigeria for 10 years, and you will find that your data with MTN is correct every time. You understand what I'm saying? You go to MTN and you've lost your SIM card, they'll say, give us like 5 or 6 numbers you call regularly. And once you write out those numbers, and they would verify that, yes, you call these people, and they give you back your number. If you don't give them the right number, they'll say, no, this is not your phone number. So this data, this technology, these things are supposed to be there. We shouldn't spend so much money and get no result for it. Something is wrong.
Do you think that we're expecting too much from INEC? Because time and again, we've seen that it was saying that logistics continue to be exactly a problem for INEC. I mean, we have certain rules that accreditation begins at 8 and at 12, voting proper begins sometime after 12, goes on till 4 o'clock, but hardly ever do we stick to time.
Yes. You know, logistics, I have been privileged to be in several meetings with INEC. In fact, at one point, I wrote a personal, should I say, term paper and suggestion to INEC, where I brought up 7 core issues. One was that the logistics was a critical thing, but within that logistics, staffing, vehicles, location, that's warehousing of materials before the election day, because take Anambra is a very small place. You don't have problems in a place like Anambra.
I would think that, with the fact that, there's total lockdown, lack of movement, you would think that it would be easy to move,
yes.
From one end of the state to another.
I cannot imagine how this would happen when you knew this election is coming more than a year ago. I expect that by 8 a.m. in a state like Anambra State, everywhere, everybody is on their post. There were enough personnel on ground. So, look, when they say there are inquiries to be done, I feel there should be a proper inquiry as to what happened in Anambra State. Why were the voter registers wrong? Because 2015 is next year. In fact, the elections are in 2014, I think, also. This election, we shouldn't play with this, because this country is so heated up that the election should be conclusive. Whoever loses should know he lost. Not a situation where results are, okay, some people say Obiano has won, INEC says the results are inconclusive. This is heating up the politics more.
And then, look at what we're seeing here. 3 of the candidates, we even have the visuals, 3 of the candidates coming together to say, we do not agree with the polls. In fact, calling for an outright cancellation
of the polls.
Do you think that they are right in what they're calling for? Or do you think that INEC should just go ahead with its supplementary polls?
You see, so much money has been spent. I was listening to the news where they said that the cancelled votes were more than the votes that were accepted as correct votes. It therefore means that the elections are truly inconclusive. We can see from the logistical problems that Ngige is saying that in his place there were no elections or stuff like that. Then you say this, you are going to have supplementary vote, you have it on Sunday at a time when people did not even know. So if you ask me, I'd say they should just cancel the election. And 20% turnout is so low.
What do you think can explain voter apathy? The seeming apathy.
If you follow these campaigns in Anambra State, to me it was there were no issues. It was just they kept on attacking each other. And you can imagine maybe even on the ground in the state, maybe they would have been very heated up in the state, and people would just say, whoever comes, let them come, and not bother themselves or find that. People might even think that on that day there will be a lot of violence, But luckily, because there was so much security presence, there was none. But somebody will just look at it. These people, with the kind of campaigns they've had, what do you think will happen on that day? So I believe that can be the only explanation for the low voter turnout.
Well, anyway, I think some will also disagree that there was nothing as voter apathy, because the turnout was immense in so many places, but for the voter register that didn't actually show names, wasn't correct. I'm just trying to find a proper word for it. That didn't actually reflect the registration of the voters in such places. But according to Mr. Wankwo, he said even on a Sunday, a whole lot of people still came out, the information went around, but some INEC staff were not seen in such polling units.
Positions, You see, that's the thing I'm saying. All of these elections, Edo State, Ondo State, now Anambra State, all of these elections are supposed to be like test cases for INEC to put itself together for the national elections. And when INEC keeps failing one after the other, INEC keeps failing, one should look at INEC itself. Because a lot is at stake. A lot is at stake. Okay? So, for me, there's no reason why you would have a station where people report to the polling station by 2 p.m. In some cases, 4 p.m. That already is electoral irregularity.
Even in Oka, where
the state capital
office is, the election materials didn't get to so many polling units early enough.
Now, you see, there are things I want to believe could have caused this. Perchance, a party that feels it's in the advantage has influence over INEC, because INEC has publicly said that one of his staff, for INEC to own up that one of his staff was compromised. You can imagine that, imagine materials, Anambra is a very small state. So I believe there was a lot of compromise, there was a lot of engineering of the elections as a way of making it possible for one candidate to be the one that is ensured to win the election. These are the things that should be probed. How did INEC staffs perform? What were their instructions at the beginning? When were they supposed to report? And then when they did not report, there's a place, say a place that is clear, you came by 2 p.m. You are supposed to be there by 7:30. You got there by 2 p.m. Where were you between 7:30 and 2 p.m.? Materials, I'm sure if you check logistical records from INEC headquarters, they couldn't say they didn't have enough printed materials for Anambra State. Where were the materials? I'm sure there were proper arrangement made for vehicles to deliver these materials, proper security arrangement made.
You know, I wish that we could play back INEC's, the INEC chairman, beg your pardon, the INEC commissioner in the state. I wish we could play back what he said before the elections.
Yes.
So that we get a feel. It seemed like everything was on course. I mean, it was so detailed that they had serviced their generators. You know, and it was saying that even that electricity wasn't going to be a problem for them, even if they had to be counting into the dead of the night. But it was saying that all of that was...
everything failed. So there needs to be a probe of this election.
When do you think that probe should be carried out? Because we believe that right now, what is at stake, we've seen protests, what is at stake is that people want, they want to be able to vote. They want to be able to exercise their franchise. Yes.
You see, one of the things I see us that's necessary, if you remember in Edo State, several people could not vote. Several people could not vote. The same thing now we have in Anambra State. So many people come to the polling booth where you have 500 names, maybe you see 17 or 18 people's names. That's fundamentally wrong. So what can we do? How do we go about this? You're asking where can this probe come from? I would prefer that maybe first there's the issue of the elections. I know yes, saying that we need, because this is going to create a constitutional problem. Because the governor's term will soon end. When is this new election going to hold? Because a new government must be declared. So if there's going to be a new election, INEC has to set out the time very clearly, very quickly. Can they print all the materials they need, considering that they use so much materials within that time? That's one. But whatever INEC does with this election, there needs to be a proper probe as to who caused these failures. And those people need to be punished and taken out of the system.
I think we'll look at punishment issue, because it looks like we haven't actually done well in that regard, making people to continue to do the same harm to the country.
Yes.
But talking about that preparation, which Mark talked about a little earlier on, because we were in Calabar and we discussed the preparations of INEC. Let's go back to that report and see the kind of assurance we got from the REC in Anambra State.